podcast. We got a lot
Boy,
of cover.
seems like we got a lot of action. I was looking forward to you giving that 5-minute explanation on this banking crisis.
Yeah, let's start on that while things are still early in the podcast. So I'm listening to a lot of what's on the TV. It's all horseshit. Everything that I've heard from all the experts, complete and total nonsense. And what I mean by that is they're all blaming it on high risk ventures. They're blaming it on, you listen to the news more than I do. I hear sort of ancillary through articles. So the unison pitch, anytime you hear everyone saying the same thing, you're pretty much being lied to. In this case, it's very, very clear. So the unison pitch is that these banks took risky assets and got a little wild and crazy. It has nothing to do with that. The banks that the banks that are in trouble right now are all across the country. It's pretty much it's a much bigger deal than they're covering in the news. It's affecting almost every bank in the United States and worldwide. And a big part of it, and this is the part and probably the reason, part and parcel as to why they didn't tell you anything, is it's mostly due to these banks buying federal treasuries or bonds. So bonds and treasuries are considered the lowest risk asset class you could ever have, period. And a few years ago, a lot of these bonds were being bought by China, by Russia, other places, Saudis. People sort of said, hey, we don't trust the dollar anymore. They could see the writing on the wall that the dollar was, going to go by the way of the dodo bird. Stop buying treasuries, stop buying bonds. And, as the economy crashed, of course, we went into a heavy interest rate raise environment. Now, what they've told you on the news, you know this as well, they're raising rates to combat inflation. Is that what your understanding is?
Seems like it.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. So here's the fun part about that. Inflation is caused by one place and one place only: government printing money. Okay. So our government has printed over 40% of the overall money in the US dollar supply over the last 3 years. So for over 40% of the money that exists has been printed recently. So of course that's going to lead to massive inflation. So what do they do to combat it? They raise the interest rates. Well, we couldn't pay the debt on our debt at 0%, which is why whenever you hear them talk about raising the debt limit, it's going back to your credit card company and saying, hey, we need more credit because we're unable to make the payments. So rather than make the payments and balance a budget, can you just, give us some more cash so that we can just max out our credit cards again? So when you hear people go, we're going to default if we don't, it means that we're going broke one section at a time. That was at 0% interest rates. So when the Fed started raising these interest rates real fast, the banks were holding these treasuries. They do mark-to-market accounting, which means that you actually account for your assets at the current time that it's in place. So the banks took a shit loss on these safest investment in the world through these treasuries and bonds, all of them. And I mean all of them. I think it's $600 billion of loss across the banking sector in the United States, a big number. And banks are leveraged by how much cash they're viewed to have. So they can bank and lend based on their cash position. So as people lost their fortunes during COVID, some people got more, obviously, businesses and things. But as these individual accounts dried up and as their leverage position dried up because they'd all bought bonds and they'd lost their money, the banks started to lose and be in a position where they had to sell and actually take the losses to cover their assets. So now these banks are fucked because they bought treasuries that China and Russia didn't buy. And then they had to hurry up and sell them in a panic. So as they panic, then people pull their money out and put it into crypto, or they're moving it into large banks like JP Morgan. JP Morgan opened up $6 billion in new accounts on Monday. So all these small banks are fucked. Now, it's all by design. It's all caused by government. So the entire reason that this is happening is our federal government has told these banks to buy these treasuries worked with the Fed to raise the rates very, very quickly, knowing that they'd lose their fucking asses on these treasuries, acted surprised, and now they're federally taking over banks by saying, look, we're not going to guarantee, the individual investors in the bank, but we're going to guarantee the money that's outside of the bank. So the federal government is using this as an excuse to federally take over banks with a problem that those cocksuckers caused themselves. And eventually they cause a big problem, swoop in and say, wow, look what we did to solve the problem. And then they point the finger at everybody else when it was them the whole time. And now they'll move us all towards CBDCs, which are central bank digital currencies, where literally everything you do in your life, every decision, who you talk to, whether you buy alcohol, the
Is
government
tracked.
will track and manage. They can turn you off. So in China, if you have more than enough alcohol a week, or if you're talking to somebody who drinks a certain amount a week, China will actually limit your ability to do certain things like withdraw money, travel, engage and vote. Anything that is a freedom thing can be turned off with the CBDC. So everything that you've seen was caused by the United States government's actions. Everybody knew it. Everybody fucking knew it. The collapses that are taking place are no surprise. These were coming a long, long time ago. And right now it's going to get a lot worse. I mean, today Credit Suisse is in trouble. Credit Suisse is not just a Swiss bank. They're worldwide. They're in New York. They have over $500 billion in assets, Credit Suisse. They're a fucking behemoth. They've been around for 168 years. This is not an isolated issue. And for the federal government to be sucking their own dick for something that they caused and now are coming in and, saying, hey, we're going to stop that, it's not going to stop. Because here's the problem. When they're guaranteeing these losses, it's more money printing. So now they're printing more money to guarantee the losses. Well, what have we been talking about? Inflation's caused by money printing, right? And they were raising rates to deal with inflation. So if you're printing more money and you're raising rates, and the raising rates caused the bank collapse because of all the bond issues, and you're printing more money as the solution, you're in a toilet cycle. You're now in a death roll. You are printing money and raising rates to combat printing money. And therefore you have to print more money to combat the issues.
Never ends.
Where it's over. But right now, the United States is at 97% of our GDP goes towards debt, 97% today, meaning everything that's created in the country, 97 cents have to go out the door to pay off the debt. It will be at 110% plus by 2030, meaning there's not enough money being generated to even pay the debt payments on the debt. So the United States is in a constant position of needing to raise that debt cycle. Nobody ever dealt with a balanced bill amendment. They all said Ron Paul was crazy. There is no solution to this. The government coming in and backing it with money is just printing more money, which is the reason our inflation is high, which is the reason we've been raising rates. So what's going to happen now? The Fed knows they have no choice. They're going to stop either. If they continue to raise rates, banks are going to fail even quicker, faster. The dominoes will fall faster. Something's already broken. So what they'll probably do is take the foot off the pedal and maybe even take rates down. Well, what does that do? It means inflation's coming harder, faster, quicker, and inflation's going to fly through the roof, Zimbabwe style. I've got some $100 trillion bills in my closet from Zimbabwe that I have as a joke. This is how it happens, because now we're in a death cycle where you have to print in order to pay to fix the issues, and you just print your way into oblivion. So everybody knows the dollar's done. Over 50, the moment the dollar was killed, just for the record here, when we took Russia off of SWIFT, and I wrote it immediately, as soon as we took them off SWIFT, the nationwide banking system, we sent a message to the world saying we would weaponize the banking system. As soon as we did that, all the big players say, shit, we don't want to be slaves to the United States banking system. They all started going over to CIS, which is the Chinese system. And currently we have Saudi Arabia, Egypt, Iran, Cuba, Venezuela, China, Russia, and India trading off the US dollar for the first time ever, which is way over half of the entire population of the world. So the United States dollar is fucked moving forward. So, and when we lose the peg to the oil, which by the way, why would we have the peg to the oil when our people that are in charge don't like oil? They're literally combating the one thing that made us all rich,
Right.
to intentionally combat it and saying this is good for the environment. Well, it's not good for the United States. He literally ran on, I hate the United States' money. And people were like, oh, that sounds fucking good. Not understanding it meant the banks were going to collapse, the country was going to collapse, the dollar was going to collapse, and all the subsequent hell that would follow. So where we are right now is in the throes of a death spiral. There's no way out. When they offer the solution for the CBDCs, it's going to be because everyone thinks that that's the solution because people don't understand banking and they don't understand what that means. But it's over, really. The only solution right now is either have gold, silver, real estate, or Bitcoin and hope that the governments don't fuck you over on the Bitcoin side. But there's nothing, there's nowhere to hide. Actually,
you've been saying this since high school.
not
Gold. No.
Yeah.
No. Talking about gold. Gold.
Yeah,
Acquire gold.
All my gold was stolen from people over the years because I put it around my neck or my or my arm. They had put it in a backpack. The backpack would walk away. But ironically, one of the only places you could hide your money right now is in rubles. So we went after Russia. Russia said, all right, we're going to tie our economy to gold. So now the ruble is backed by gold, and the ruble's stronger than when we started fucking with Russia through proxy through Ukraine. So one of the most stable economies in the world right now is the economy that the news told you we were taking down and would have no chance of surviving because they partner tightly with China and India and Egypt, and they've tied their actual economy to gold, which they planned for years, knowing that we could be this big of idiots to take them off SWIFT and show the world our asses. So now everybody's basically saying, well, fuck, why do we have to deal with dollars? Nobody else is. So the United States is fucked, and this administration did it. It's not just this administration. Administrations past. Trump is guilty of this. Trump refused to allow Powell to raise interest rates when he was president, bitched that, hey, why are you going to do this when, Republicans in office? The right thing to do would have been to raise rates. It would have crashed a little bit of the economy. We're not living in a capitalist society at all. It's all government owned now, government bailouts of everything for crony capitalism. It's not real capitalism. The real capitalism would have been let this shit fail.
Let them fail as they will.
Scavengers come in and take up the pieces. Everybody who's involved that gets hurt, sorry, but that's the way the system works. Pick up your pieces, pick up yourself.
The market decide.
Yeah, and what we have now is one major more step towards communism, because now we have way more federal control of the banks and heading towards CBDCs, which is complete digital control over everybody that uses money anywhere in the world. So that's my take of what's happening. It's a very bleak picture, but it's also the truth. And you're not going to hear that shit on CNBC where Jim Cramer literally touting banks that are failing days, minutes, seconds before they're actually taken over, going, I really like Silicon Valley Bank. This is one of the best banks in the world. Literally like a couple weeks later, Silicon Valley Bank has been taken over by federal regulators.